The sting of salt spray lashes your face as you're hauled toward a longship, the last familiar touch you may ever feel. You're 17, standing on Ireland's ragged coast, and everything you knew has collapsed in an instant. The men dragging you speak in clipped, alien sounds, their coarse laughter like a kennel of dogs. Thick ropes bite your wrists raw. Behind you, smoke rolls from the ruins of your village, burning your throat, a funeral pyre for the life that just ended. You're no longer someone's daughter or friend. You're a prize, a piece of spoils, and this is only the opening step on a road that will turn darker than you can yet imagine. This was the Viking Age, stretching from the late 700s through the mid-11th century. We usually picture bold explorers, fierce raiders, master shipbuilders. We think of sagas, carved prows, and the legendary attack on Lindisfarne. But behind the heroic gloss and the horned helmets they never actually wore lurks a harsher reality. For centuries, the Norse economy leaned heavily on a vast, disciplined, and chilling trade in human beings. Slavery wasn't a side effect of plunder. It was often the target itself, the richest reward a raid could deliver. From the rocky shores of the British Isles to the forests of the Slavic East, thousands of women were seized, stripped of their names, and sold into servitude. This isn't a sensational tale stitched together for drama. It's a history reconstructed from Viking law codes, from the spare but devastating records left by monks, from graves and ship burials unearthed in peat and soil, and from the coldly factual notes of Arab envoys who dealt with Norse merchants. If you're drawn to raw, unpolished history, consider subscribing and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now, let's step inside the machinery that made this trade thrive. Because, above all, it ran like a system. Popular stories paint raids as storms of chaos. In truth, they were deliberate ventures, more business than brawl. Raiding crews were financed operations. A local chieftain, or a syndicate of felagar, partners bound by silver and ambition, would pool resources to commission or outfit a ship. Timber for hulls, iron nails and rivets, wool sailcloth, tartar seal seams, food for the crew, every element demanded serious capital. Investors expected returns, and the most dependable return was human cargo. Their ships were marvels of design, tuned for this grim commerce. Shallow draft craft, like the Sneckjar or the bigger Skide, could sell. At these markets, whatever fragments of dignity a woman still clung to were stripped away. She was handled like livestock. The Arab envoy Ahmad ibn Fadlan, meeting Rus merchants on the Volga in the 900s, left a stark eyewitness account. He described them setting up a bazaar beside the river, arranging their captives in rows. A trader, he wrote, might openly lie with a slave girl while his companion watched. No curtains, no shame. It was a public display of total dominion, a tactic to prove value before the sale. Her body was a commodity to be demonstrated. After purchase, a woman's future hinged entirely on her buyer's needs or whims. The most common fate was endless, punishing drudgery. As a thrall, she took on the heaviest household duties, the in-house work. She would rise long before dawn and collapse long after dark. Her routine was grinding grain with a quernstone until her teeth wore down, fetching buckets of water from icy streams, tending the longhouse hearth, brewing ale, preparing meals, laundering heavy wool garments in frigid rivers. Textile work was crucial too, producing vadmal, the coarse wool fabric that underpinned the Norse economy. Shearing, washing, carding, spinning, weaving, each step demanded strength and time, and the entire enterprise rested on the hands of enslaved women. Even Norse poetry captured the toll. The old poem Rigsula, which mythologized the birth of social classes, portrays thralls with knotted fingers, leathery skin, and aching joints, a poetic but brutally accurate image of lives spent in relentless labor. Science adds its own evidence. Studies of Viking-era skeletons show that those buried with few possessions, likely slaves, often had meager diets and bones marred by heavy strain and malnutrition, a silent record of deprivation. But toil was not the end of their ordeal. For many, exploitation reached deeper. They were also pressed into sexual servitude. This part of Viking society is often softened or overlooked, yet the historical and archaeological sources leave no doubt. With no legal standing, a female thrall's body belonged wholly to her owner. He could use her whenever and however he wished. The law called it a right, not an offence. Later, Icelandic sagas, though written centuries on, echo that custom plainly. Powerful men are shown taking enslaved women as concubines, frillur in Old Norse. These were not secret liaisons, they were recognised graves throughout the Viking world that hint at similar retainer deaths. At Flagstad in Norway, a burial held several individuals, one decapitated, laid as subordinates beside a high-ranking woman. The renowned Oseberg ship grave yielded two females, one older, clearly of elevated station, the other younger, whose bones reveal a harsher life and lower status. Many experts suspect she was a thrall offered up to accompany her mistress beyond the grave. Such finds confirm a sobering truth. For women seized in raids, life might end not only in endless labour or forced intimacy, but as part of a master's property even in death. A final, bloody accessory to display his prestige on the journey to the afterlife. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect is how ordinary all this seemed to Norse society. Enslaved people were central to its economy and social order. A chieftain's reputation was measured not just in fields, silver, or warships, but also in the number of thralls under his command. The sagas, the very literature that preserves their legends, treat bondage not as a crime or moral failing, but as a basic fact of existence. Slavery was stitched into the fabric of their culture, feeding the engine of conquest and colonization. Behind every saga hero or explorer stood unnamed women whose stories rarely made the parchment, abducted mothers, concubines, servants, and sometimes sacrifices. Their labour wove the textiles that kept settlements alive. Their bodies bore the next generation, some even shared their captors' pyre. To understand the Viking Age honestly is to confront these silenced lives, the hidden cost of expansion and fame. The grandeur of dragon-proud ships and tales of fearless raiders cannot eclipse the reality that, for countless women, the Viking world was a cage, one from which only death, or the rare chance of ransom, offered release. This was not a culture wrestling with guilt over its own brutality. It was a society resting on exploitation so familiar that few even questioned it. Freedom existed, but only as a steep, narrow path. Manumission, the act of releasing a thrall, did occur. An owner might reward years of service or leave freedom in a will. The Harning runestone in Denmark records how Tolki the blacksmith honoured his former master Thorgus, who granted him gold and liberty. Stories like this survive because they were remarkable, not routine. For most captured women, bondage lasted a lifetime and extended to their children. The end of this order came slowly, through tangled currents of politics and faith. As Scandinavia adopted Christianity in the 10th and 11th centuries, the Church officially discouraged enslaving fellow Christians. Slavery did not vanish, its targets merely shifted toward pagan Slavs and Baltic peoples. Gradually, the absolute slavery of the Viking Age gave way to the milder, but still coercive, bonds of medieval serfdom. For centuries, however, the trade flourished unchecked. What the Viking Age lays bare is an uncomfortable truth about how exploitation thrives. The seizure and enslavement of women were not stray crimes committed by rogues on the edge of society. They were an economic engine, a ladder of advancement, a system that society itself endorsed. The silver hoards buried across Scandinavia, the timber halls echoing with feasts, the daring voyages to Iceland, Greenland, even North America, all drew strength from the stolen labour and stolen bodies of women. To understand this period honestly, we must see the whole picture. Admire the master shipwrights, but remember the women who spun and wove the wool that became their sails. Celebrate the warriors' ferocity, but picture the terrified girls forced aboard their longships. Treasure the sagas for their literary genius, yet read between the lines to notice the casual cruelty woven into their plots. The history of what Vikings inflicted on captured women is not a mere shadowy footnote. It is a case study in how a society can normalize the dehumanization of others. It shows how quickly human beings can become merchandise, things to be worked, traded, or discarded when worn out. The proof surrounds us, in chronicles written by victims and observers, in Norse laws codifying ownership of thralls, in the DNA of living populations, and in skeletal remains scattered beneath the soil. Together, they form a stark ledger of how thoroughly slavery underpinned the Norse world. The popular image of the Viking as a free spirit, wild and unbound, is only half the story. That freedom rested on the backs of the unfree, on the anguish of those seized from villages and shores, shipped across oceans, and stripped of choice. Runestones and sagas may recount triumphs, but the truer legacy is etched into quieter records. The mute testimony of women whose toil fueled commerce, whose suffering financed exploration, whose lives were consumed to elevate others. Their stories, mostly unspoken, are essential to any honest portrait of the North's past. To look at the Viking Age is to look at innovation and courage, yes, but also at a machinery of domination that treated human lives as raw material. Beneath the romance of longships lies a forgotten reality. The countless women whose freedom, labour, and even breath were taken to build an empire of sails and silver.